Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Tara Ramanian, and on behalf of Lung Foundation Australia, I'd like to welcome you to the first Lived Experience panel webinar of 2022. So through this virtual meeting place today, we're gathering from many parts of Australia, and I'd like to start by acknowledging the traditional owners of country and their continuing connection to land, sea and community. For myself here in Brisbane this afternoon, I'm standing on the lands of the Yagara and Turrbal peoples. We pay our respects to them and their cultures and to elders both past, present and emerging. So in honour of World Pulmonary Hypertension Day today, we are presenting this webinar, which is proudly supported by our sponsors who are all listed on our website. Our pulmonary arterial hypertension panel are here today to answer questions that you've submitted and to share their lived experiences with the condition. Before we begin, just some very brief housekeeping. Firstly, today's webinar will be recorded and made available on our website, so it can be viewed at a later date if you can't stay the whole duration. You will be notified by the email that you registered with once it is available as well. Secondly, a Q&A session will be held towards the end of the webinar, so please feel free to submit any questions via the Q&A box, which you can access in the toolbar at the bottom of the screen throughout the presentation. Please note that questions should be of a general nature only, and any individual specific questions will need to be referred to your treating doctor. So I'm very excited to welcome our fantastic panel for today. We have four amazing ladies who you might recognise from our webinar last year on Life with PAH treatment. So I'll give a brief run through of who we've got before passing it on to our speakers. So our lineup for today is Kate Gleeson from Victoria, Lucy Leland from Western Australia, Tegan Dunmore from Victoria, and Kylie Corkery from New South Wales. So before we begin today, I'll give our panelists a chance to introduce themselves as well, so everyone joining us can put a face to the name. So ladies, if you could just share a little bit background with your PAH journey as well, so we can have some context, that would be amazing. But I'll hand over first to you, Kate, and we'll follow the order on the slides after that.
My name's Kate and I live in Melbourne. I was diagnosed with pulmonary hypertension not long after my daughter was born, which apparently is quite common, that diagnosis after a birth. So I don't know the numbers on that. Please don't quote me. It's just something that I have heard. Before having my daughter, I was very fit. My whole family's always been very fit, very active. I tried to regain that and was not able to. I had a few fainting sessions as well. So I went to the doctor and luckily was very quickly diagnosed, which is great. I didn't have to wait and go doctor shopping to find an answer. My daughter is now, she's just about to have a birthday. She's about to have her 32nd birthday. So that's been amazing to be able to see her grow up, and now she has her own children, 3 children, so I hope to see them also grow up, which is all looking good. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Lucy. I'm from WA. I was diagnosed similar to Kate way back in 1988, before there were any specific pulmonary hypertension medications, before anyone really knew what it was. And I was told back then I had 2 years to live. But I've been very fortunate because I'm still here. It has been a little bit of a downhill slide, but I've been fairly stable on IV meds for about 12 years now. I was, like Kate, very lucky to be diagnosed quickly, within about 6 months. And I think that's played a huge factor in why I'm still here.
I'm Tegan. I was actually diagnosed as a 5-year-old off the back of what was initially thought to be epilepsy. I was having these prolific seizures that were often spurred on by physical activity. And so that was where it started when I was about 4. And by the time I was 5, I had the concurrent diagnosis. And again, like Lucy, there was no treatments available, and even less for children. But I was started on lower doses of adult medications aimed at, I guess, heart-based illnesses. And then from there, I guess, the medical miracles and all sorts of things have happened in the interim. And yeah, I'm lucky, like everyone else, to be here again today.
I'm Kylie and I live in New South Wales. I was diagnosed back in 2006. However, I wasn't so lucky with a quick diagnosis. It was probably over an 18-month period of decline in my health. I was a chef doing, 60, 70 odd hours a week, and I was becoming more breathless. Doctors were telling me I had asthma, giving me puffers. Then, telling me that it was in my head, that there was nothing wrong with me. So I obviously went through a number of doctors before, finally got someone that listened to me, obviously because I landed in hospital with, right heart failure and very ill. So I guess that to me is a big reason why I've, become a part of this, because I know how important being diagnosed and like listening to your gut it is in this whole experience. So yeah, but like everybody else, once again, I'm lucky also. I've been on IV meds since 2008. So yeah, I'm pretty, happy that I'm here, I guess.
Amazing. Thank you so much, ladies, for sharing. And we're really looking forward to hearing about your experiences today as well. So we'll kick off today's webinar with our pre-submitted questions, and then we'll move on to the live Q&A portion towards the end. So the first question we have in today is, what are your tips and strategies for managing fatigue with PAH? Now I'll hand over to Lucy for this one.
Okay, thanks, Tara. This is a really strange question for me, because I have to be honest and say that I don't really have tips and strategies for managing fatigue, because the fatigue manages me. I think when I was younger, it was a bit different. But now that I've got severe pulmonary hypertension and, I'm in my 50s, I do find that it dictates what I can and can't do. So I just have to go with it. And if I need to sit on the couch and put my feet up, then I sit on the couch and put my feet up. But even when I was younger, I would do a full day at work and go home for a sleep, which was probably quite unusual, compared with my other colleagues. And I do it, but I do it now unapologetically. So if I have somewhere to be and I wake up and I'm not feeling good and I can't go, then I just cancel, which is, sometimes it's really disappointing if I've been looking forward to something for a few weeks, but there's not a lot I can do about it. If I suddenly lost my eyesight, I wouldn't be saying, how am I going to manage my visual impairment? I would just have to accept it, and that's the way it is for me, and it actually works quite well for me. Once I've accepted it, then that's fine. I also tend to chunk things. Like if I'm doing something, I always make sure I've got food in the freezer that's ready to eat, healthy food that's ready to eat, or so that if I can't prepare a meal, at the moment my husband's away, so I can't fall back on him, and that's fine. If I don't get off the couch all day, then I don't get off the couch all day, and I'll warm something up in the microwave. I don't know if that's really helpful for people who are hoping that I could wave a magic wand and say, it's fine. If you wish it away, it'll go away. But my tip really is just to accept it. Have your little cry, and if that's what you need to do, and then just get on with it. So I don't know if anyone has anything to add to that.
I kind of think Lucy's just, once again, I always love listening to Lucy because she, for me, she's a reminder of the being kind to yourself. So thank you, Lucy. That was one of the things I also picked up from the last webinar with you. When she's right on the mark again. Yeah.
So we'll go on to the next one. So the next question we got in was, what is your advice on exercise and any activities you have found helpful? So we'll start with Kay, if you'd like to start us off, and then we'll follow with Tegan and then Lucy as well.
As I mentioned when I was introducing myself, exercise has always been a part of my life. It's always been a part of my family's life, particularly growing up in the country, as far as a lot of community-based activities were based around your exercise as well. So the netball and the football and the cricket, etc. So it's always been there. It's always been important. Into adulthood and getting pulmonary hypertension, it became my way of alleviating and helping not only pulmonary hypertension, but keeping my weight down and also my mental health. Always been great for that. I used to be a walker. I used to walk a lot. Loved walking, because it's free and it's something that you can just go out and do at any time. It doesn't require a lot of equipment. It doesn't require a gym membership, all of those things. So if you felt good, go out and walk. If you don't, then you can just rest. Things that I've loved about walking is the rhythm that you can get. So it can become very melodic as well. I'm also lucky enough to live not so far from the beach, so walking down to the beach as well. And along the beach has always been amazing as well, getting that fresh air. And studies have found that exercise, although it can be very difficult, any kind of exercise can assist and be helpful for pulmonary hypertension. I have found, perhaps in the last year, that I haven't been able to walk the way that I've previously have been, which is again had an impact on my mental health and of course my general well-being. But I've found an alternative, which is yoga. So if I couldn't do that very aerobic, that go outside and exercise my my lungs and get outside and do it, then I would shift my focus onto more strength-based, a bit more gentle, which was yoga. So, which I found really great as well. It's really good for centering. It's calming. It's breathing as well. Focus on your breathing is very important during yoga as well. So that's had its own benefits as well. Joining a yoga practice can be expensive, but there are YouTube yogas as well. So they're actually really good as well. So again, it's free. You don't need a lot of equipment. There's lots of different types of yogas. So just, yeah, that's been good for me. But it's also really important to be speaking to your doctors about what kind of exercise that you can do, what might be good for you. and I know that most major centres have pulmonary rehab as well. So, so definitely speak to your doctors about it. That's what's been helpful for me. I can't speak obviously on behalf of everyone, but yeah, it'd be interesting to see what other people have to say as well.
I think my sort of take on exercise might be a little bit different, but I think it comes from the fact that I was the opposite to you in that I did not come from an active household, because I was diagnosed at 5 and before that for having seizures and exercise causing those. So I wasn't able to do any sort of exercise at the beginning. And it wasn't until I started on sort of medications that help manage my symptoms that I could then even think about exercise. Sort of rolling over in bed would cause me breathlessness and having a seizure. So exercise wasn't possible. So when it became possible, like my world kind of exploded. It was this like sort of like, what will I choose? What will I do? But I was again limited by carrying a pump, which then excludes physical contact sports, and I was on blood thinners, so that excludes any ball sports. So I was quite limited, but I do like your take on free exercise, which is the walking and those sorts of things, and getting the dog, which has popped in the screen, has been super helpful in encouraging me to get out and walk. I think most of my exercise is mostly incidental, and I try to walk at a fast pace to get my heart rate up a little bit, so I feel like I'm, participating in that exercise. I think muscle is where I sort of lack in terms of I find it really strenuous to and overexert myself when I do muscle-based exercises. So it's that low weights that I sort of need to do, and that's sort of the recommendations of the physios that I've spoken to at the Alfred. I do have low weights that I sort of just do arm weights for as an extra sort of support on top of my walking. But one of the things that I find is that you need to do an exercise that you like to do, otherwise you aren't going to do it. And I was thinking outside the box a little bit, and I do enjoy the cardiovascular side of exercise. Those exercises are my preference over the weight exercises. So I've actually started hula hooping with weighted hula hoops in the last sort of 6 months, which is kind of like off a COVID sort of, indoor activity. And I really enjoy it. It sort of gets your heart rate going, it gets your hips going and your thighs and your abs. And it's sort of like I just do it while watching TV, and I feel like I'm participating in a solid exercise routine, inside. So I think that like we were talking about before, you've got your fatigue and your pH, your exercise and your pH have to go together. So I haven't used my hula hoop in a few weeks, but I think when I'm feeling better or when I'm feeling more energized, it's definitely like something that I enjoy doing. So it's managing, I guess, fatigue and what you want to do with the exercise and the capacity that you have. So, if you can if you can do the vacuum cleaning quickly, that's sort of something, it gets your heart rate going. I'm bending, I'm standing, I'm walking, I'm moving, but doing it in a fast way makes your heart rate. That's a little exercise that I feel like I am definitely exercising while vacuuming, I can tell you. So I think exercise can be found in lots of places. And I think managing your fatigue and your breathlessness and your heart rate as well as exercise is important.
Wow, I'm just going to reiterate what the other two ladies have said. I have a bit of a feeling here that we have a little affinity in our passion about diet and exercise. We all seem to be on that same ball page. And I do wonder if it's impacted on our longevity, that realisation that we have to be responsible for our own well-being. And I think that's a huge factor in probably all of our still being here. Kate, I'm a big fan of yoga as well. Really love the yoga, love walking too. And I've got my two little dogs here. They'll probably start barking in a minute, who make sure that I get out and have a walk, even if I don't really feel up to it. So that's really, really good for me. The other thing, as Tegan said, is finding that intrinsic exercise. If I'm hanging out washing, I don't use my dryer. I very rarely use my dryer. I will hang out my washing, and I will put my washing basket on the floor and I squat. So I pick up each item and the pegs one by one, and I squat with each one. And that just gives me that little bit of extra exercise. If I go to the shops, I park as far away as I feel that I can that day. Some days I can't. Some days I have to go, as you know, in the parent parking, or I've actually even got a disability parking, which I rarely use. I only ever use if I want it, if I need to, sorry. So that intrinsic exercise for me is really important, and also doing something you love. I love it. Tegan, I've never actually been able to manage a hula hoop, but I've done roller skating, even with the bruising. You know, that's just something I love it, and I love it with the music. And the music gives me that extra beat to focus on to get me going a little bit faster. I do a lot of dancing in front of the TV when there's no one around. Sometimes I'll shut myself in another room in the dark and listen to music and dance around. It's not really dancing, it's sort of, you know, my own form of, I don't know if it's Zumba or whatever it is. But, you know, I just find that something that I enjoy doing rather than making it a chore. The other thing, I always take hills and stairs. It's something that I can do. My husband knows to slow down dramatically if we're going up a hill. And stairs I see as a challenge whenever we travel. If I see something with stairs, you know, I've got to conquer it. So I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but you know, if there's something when you say, you know, I've got PH and I've climbed the Eiffel Tower. So the other one thing I've got notes here that I'm looking to. The other thing, I used to actually like going to classes. This is when I was much younger, and I can't do this now. But things like pump and step and those sorts of things, I couldn't keep up with everyone else, and I'm really uncoordinated. But I would just find my little spot at the back and go and have a chat with the instructor and say, don't encourage me. You know, I know I'm going to look really slow and, you know, what healthy people might call a bit of a failure down the back, but I'm doing the best I can, you know, with the physical capabilities that I've got. So please don't just leave me alone. And the other thing, following up with what Tegan said about pulmonary rehab, I actually had a point where my 2-minute walk distance went down to 6-minute walk test went down to 240 meters. And I was terrified to really do much, because I didn't know if I walked to the end of the street, would I be able to get home again? And so going to pulmonary rehab gave me that support of having someone there to supervise what I was doing, and gave me a really safe environment. And I learned tips about like even putting chairs around your garden, so that you know that you only have to get from one chair to the next chair to the next chair. And, you know, my 6-minute walk test is now running around 680 metres. So that's something that, just having that confidence would help as well. So, but yeah, absolutely agree with what the other ladies said. So thank you.
Can I just both ask Kate and Lucy a question in terms of like doing yoga? Where do you put your pump? You both are on IV, aren't you? That's what. Oh, you're not.
Yeah.
No, I'm not, but yeah.
Okay, where do you pop your pump?
Oh, I think I'm answering the question on the pump. I've got 2 dogs as well. So downward dog and up dog's really interesting, because I've got dogs jumping at my face as well. Sometimes I've got one of these packs.
Yeah.
I just strap it around my waist and then roll it to the back, so it's on the back. Sometimes I just leave it on the floor and do what I can. Because I
imagine some positions you'd have to move it around a little bit to actually get in position.
And it's just when you sort of in a relationship and you're getting intimate as well, that's a whole new thing. So it's just one of those things, you have to accept it, and you just have to laugh about it, and you know that it's a little bit more difficult, but just deal with it.
Agreed.
Thanks so much, ladies. It was some really creative ideas of ways to get exercise into your day. Thank you.
Sorry, I'll just go back. The benefit of the yoga on YouTube is that you can pause it as well. So you just pause if you need to catch your breath, or you need to really study what's that position doing or where you put your pump, and then you can go again. So yeah.
Thanks, Kate. And yeah, just also reiterating that point around pulmonary rehab. If there's anyone joining us today who hasn't heard about that, we'd really encourage you to speak to your GP about, if that's a suitable option for you. It's a really great exercise and education program. So thanks for bringing that one up, ladies. So we'll go on to the next question. The next one we've got is, how do you help your family and friends understand your condition? And I'll hand over to Tegan for this one.
Perfect. I guess, so my family had a different perspective, I guess, in that they were my primary caregivers as a 5-year-old. But as grow up and, have different needs as a teenager, and then as a young adult, and then as an adult, which I am fearful of being, you change who is your support and who is your network. And I guess my mum was my primary network to begin with. And so her coming to all my appointments, she understood everything better than I did as a 5-year-old. But as things and the dynamic changes, I brought in friends and family, and they came to appointments. They were there for me when the doctors talked to me about my condition and about prognosis. And I think that was key at about, I think I was 19 when I sort of realized that I don't want to go to my doctor's appointments alone. I don't want to hear bad news, but I also don't want to hear it alone. So bringing them to those appointments means that they hear it firsthand, and what I've told them and what they see in me, they then also are told from a medical perspective at that appointment. And so they understand the whole appointment and the whole, I guess, my journey a lot better. It also helps me a lot by having them present. So I brought friends to appointments. I've brought boyfriends to appointments. My sisters come. I've had to have a rush to the emergency department. I've had lots of friends take me there, because it's always when it's a long weekend and we're away somewhere funny. So they're that support network at the time, and they're aware of my condition, but maybe I present without any sort of structural differences, but when they come to the hospital, they hear the language and the terminologies and the severity, I guess, of the condition, and how serious it is to not have my IV medication being delivered, or what my bloods mean, or I had fevers a couple of years ago, and how the fevers were unrelated, but how that impacted on my pH and what that meant for me long term. So bringing them into your life and into your appointments not only supports you, but it supports them to understand you. And that's, I think, the best way to have that cohesive relationship.
Thanks so much for that, Tegan. Just noting for time, right, we'll go on to the next question. So the next one we've got in was, what treatment options have you tried in managing your PAH? So we'll get Kylie to start off with this one, and then Tegan as well after her.
Okay, well, I guess my main ones that I have relied on, obviously, are my medical medications as such, and pulmonary rehab, which we spoke about just before. Also, I think it's really important for your mental health as well, to make sure that if you need to talk to someone that's not in your loop, that, because sometimes it's really confronting for you to speak to your friends and family as to how you're really feeling, because then they get scared. That's not what you sort of need at the time. You need to make sure that you either talk with your team, your treating team. I know my team are really good for, if I'm having a really rough day, you can ring, or I can ring my team and say, look, I'm having a really bad day. Nothing in particular, like, I'm not sick as such, but I'm just struggling. Just to know that, you're not a super person, and that it's okay to have a bad day, and tomorrow is a new day. So just, I don't think you should sit around, it's okay to cry, and process everything. But yeah, I think it's important also to have someone out of your loop, so that if you need to say, look, I'm feeling like I'm declining, or whatever the case may be, that you're not scaring your circle. And then you see their, confronted faces going, oh no, and then you feel bad because you've made them feel bad because they feel sorry for you, or whatever the case may be. So yeah, I guess that's my three important things that I've used so far anyway.
Kylie's spot on. I've used mostly medication management, and I think, I'm on what is currently considered gold standard of therapy, but that has definitely changed over the years. So that is the largest part of my health journey, has been the actual medical management. However, in particular times when my body isn't able to do the things that it could do or other people are doing, I've definitely reached out to other sorts of holistic approaches to therapies. Doing massage, I did Reiki, I've done all sorts of things. And while I don't necessarily advocate specifically for them, it allowed me a time out from life to just take a moment. And that taking a moment is probably more important than the actual thing that you are doing. So if you find massage to be really helpful, and that's your time out from life and PH and whatever you're doing, that's great. I've had to use chest physio in the past, and that's like a sort of for a productive cough to help me manage that. But I've also used back massage and other sorts of physiotherapy-based massages, taking that time to specifically center yourself, and whatever way that works for you, and that will be many different things. I have a friend who does gardening, and that's her way of centering herself, but that wouldn't work for me. Mine would be sort of massage or reading, or taking a moment for yourself, because that is the most important. If you aren't taking care of yourself as a whole, then nothing will come together as it should, and it can be hard to identify what that thing might be for you. And that's why I definitely tried lots of different things when I was a child and a teenager, because I wasn't sure. I wasn't even sure who I was, to be honest. I'm definitely not the person I was when I was a teenager. But trying all those things allowed me to see what I felt and how I can help myself. And I think that's part of managing and treating your PAH.
Thank you so much, Kylie and Tegan. They were really insightful responses. And really important points as well, especially around looking after yourself and your own well-being. So thank you for those. Were there any other thoughts from other panelists before we go on to the next question? No, beautiful. So the next one we got was, how do you sleep and shower with an IV infusion? Did it affect your lifestyle and daily activities? So for this one, I'll hand over to Lucy first, and then followed by Kylie.
Okay, thanks, Tara. Something practical. Okay, how do you sleep with an IV infusion? I just pop mine, in a queen size bed between the two pillows, and I find that works for me. Sometimes if I'm suffering a bit of insomnia, which I am at the moment, I will, wake up. I'll toss and turn, and I'll wake up with the cord wrapped all the way around me. Hello, Daisy. It's just one of those things that you have to get up, untangle yourself, and just go back to sleep. That was something in the first couple of weeks, and I'm just going to try and see if I can set off the alarm on the pump. When I think I'd had the pump for 2 weeks, and it failed, and my spare pump failed as well. So I ended up, with the ambulance and bells and whistles and all that, which is really, really scary when it's all very new to you. And the alarm would go off sometimes in the middle of the night because I'd clamped the tube or whatever else I'd done. And my husband would lay there for about an hour, I think, just listening to the pump, making sure that the pump was still whirring every 3 minutes, I think it was back then, and that I was still breathing and all that. So it is really, really stressful in the first instance. But now, if the alarm goes off in the middle of that one, if the alarm goes off in the middle of the night, I'll just fix it like that, usually in the dark, and we're back asleep and he's snoring before I am. So yeah. Okay, how do I shower? All right, this little bit here, I hope you can see it because I can't see if it's in the frame or not. All right, I just hang that over I've actually got a bigger one in the bathroom, but hang it over the back of the shower. I've got my pump in a little bag like this. I've got all different variations of this. This one is called a runner's belt, and I think it's about $8 or something on eBay. And I just hang that on the outside of the shower. When I travel, I always have one of these in my suitcase, and I'll find that no matter where I'm staying, no matter what the bathroom configuration is, I'll always find somewhere that I can hang the pump and keep it dry while I'm showering. So did it affect my daily lifestyle and daily activities? Absolutely. The one thing is that you're worried, obviously, about damaging the pump or damaging yourself with the pump. The biggest issue for me was swimming. I know Kate mentioned earlier about living near the beach. I used to live near the beach too, and I loved walking along the beach. That was my real thing. Walk along the beach, get hot, go for a swim, walk a bit further, go for a swim to cool down. So not being able to swim was a huge, I suppose it was a cause of depression, really. But again, once I accepted it and dealt with it and thought, okay, it's not the end of the world. I've got a way of keeping the pump really, really dry if I wanted to sit on the edge of water or something like that. Get my head around it and it's fine. It's better to be alive than, to go swimming. So I think that answers the question.
Okay, so yeah, I'm the same as you, Lucy. I use a hook, or if not, I have like a little stool that I sit just outside my shower, which I sit my pump on. And in regards to affecting my lifestyle, obviously, again, swimming is a huge thing, and I love going fishing and on the boat, stuff like that, which obviously you can still do. However, I always have to have a plan of attack if, I'm going out to look for whales. My brother owns a big boat, so he, likes to take me out fishing, etc. But I have to make sure that we're in a certain distance. So if we have a malfunction on my pump, I carry a backpack with a spare everything. So, if my cassette has a hole, whatever the case may be, I've got something to change, to try before I need to get, to the hospital, etc. But yeah, I always just make sure, I guess, I have a plan in the back of my mind. So if something occurs, I know that I'm going to be okay. I know it sounds like it's, a constant stressor on you, but it makes me feel more at ease knowing that I have a plan of attack, especially like if I plan to go on a holiday. I once went to Hamilton Island. I rang up there to see what medical facilities they have on the island. I let them know that I was coming. Made sure I took a heap more medication than I would usually need in case I got stuck on the island. Just made sure that there was someone on the island that could put in an IV if need be. So there's all this extra stuff that, you take for granted before IV. However, if I didn't have IV, I would be on a totally different path. I would either not be here or I would be on a transplant journey. So, you've got to weigh up the pros and cons. And for me, as much as sometimes it really gets you down and you just want to be able to you know, oh, I want to go to the coast, get in your car and go, not have a process of packing your meds, making sure, you know, you've got everything. I would much prefer to be here and doing what I actually can do now than not being able to do anything at all. So, yeah, I think you just got to be grateful. And like you said, Lucy, once you get your head around, yes, this is crap, I guess, and it's hard, you sort of just adjust your life to it, and then, you know, you sort of get on with it as such. So, yeah.
That's real. I think what you've hit on there, Kylie, is that if it's worth it,
yeah,
you'll put in the effort, you know. And I know Tegan's the same as well. Travel is, you know, our big one. That you know, I take 2 full carry-ons usually, and I always put my meds in carry-on.
Yeah.
We went to Tassie in November, and yeah, I took about 2 or 3 weeks extra, because with the whole COVID situation and being in WA, we were going to, you know, get stuck. And I knew I'd find drugs eventually, but, you know, it might have taken me a while to get hold of them. So, yeah, it's like you said, planning.
I also have, just to touch base also, I also have a piece of paper that I keep in my pouch with my pump, with all my instructions, not just like, you know, who to call, but like, do not turn this pump off, do not take blood from this, do not prime, do not, all the do nots inside with my pump, so that if there was an incident, all of my people that I do things with know that I have that piece of paper. And I also have given that piece of paper, a copy of it, to my group, so everybody has it at their house as well. So everybody is aware of what the AMBOs can do because they don't know.
And AMBOs don't believe you either. They don't believe that you know.
No, and they don't have protocol.
And they'll try and triage you as a 4 or yeah.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, I think that's another one of my safety for my own being as well.
That's great.
Thanks so much, ladies. That was some really practical advice and tips as well. But yeah, so just a reminder to submit any questions you have in the Q&A box. We are on to our last pre-submitted questions. After this one, we'll go on to the live Q&A portion. So the last question we've got from the pre-submitted ones is, what have you found helpful in managing breathlessness? And Kate, the floor is open for you on this one.
Okay. I guess you just have to follow your own body and what you can do. So, you know, if I have to change my bed, for example, change the sheets, I usually feel better, like more energetic in the morning. So I know, I plan that I'll change my bed and then let it sit for, you know, a couple of hours, and then I go back and make my bed. So I think it's just really important to listen to your own body and adjust to what your body's telling you. I think that's the best way to manage how you go about things. It's the same with grocery shopping. If I'm not feeling up to it or not feeling great, I make sure I have someone with me. Or if, you know, I just go and get what I actually really need to get that day, rather than, you know, having to do, if I was going to had planned to do a full shop, I would then reassess and go, okay, well, clearly I'm not up to that and it can wait till tomorrow, you know. So it's really just listening to your own body, I think, and doing what's best for you and not feeling bad about it. Like, you can only do what you can do.
I certainly would agree there with Kylie. Having after having PH for so long, you do learn when you have more energy, or you need to plan to have more energy as well. I have a thing that I call put energy in the bank. So if I know I need to do something, then I will deliberately rest coming up to it. So I've got that energy in the bank. And breathlessness as well. Like you said, you know what makes you feel breathless, so you plan around that, and you just stop. Making the bed, that's hard. That can be really hard. Vacuuming, Tegan mentioned before, that's hard. So you just need to plan it, or have someone else do it for you. I had a yoga class yesterday, and I did find myself getting a little breathless, and I just stopped, closed my eyes, wait for it to go, and then went in a little more slowly. So it was just a reminder. It was a reminder that if your body tells you to stop, and then you just do, and you with that knowledge and experience, you just learn to know, and you just deal with it and work around it.
I'm not actually addressing the question, but and I've lived with this for such a long time that I think now it's just me and it's who I am. But listening to the rest of you ladies, I think we're pretty darn remarkable in how we deal with what we have to deal with. So thank you, ladies, and well done to all of you.
I second that, Lucy. Very true. You guys are all very strong women, and I've loved hearing all your experiences so far. Were there any other things that anyone else wanted to throw in there for this one before we go on to the live Q&A? Happy to go on? Right. Beautiful. So you can keep submitting your questions as well if you still have some that you'd like to get answered by a beautiful panel today, but we'll start with what we've got. So one question that we've gotten in is, what has been your experience of working with the ambulance service? So then kind of building on what's kind of been mentioned already. The floor is open. Anyone want to start us off on this one? Or?
I'm happy to do that. So I've had some good and not so bad experiences, I suppose. I have contacted the local ambulance service and filled them in with my needs, like if I were in an emergency situation. So they have, instructions as to what they can and can't do as well. I've also given that piece of paper to my local hospital, so they also know. However, those people, me being in a small country town, I had an incident that my line broke because it was in for 5 years and it finally gave up. And my local ambo driver that, knows me well and knows the process, he wasn't actually working and he wasn't in town that day, and there was no ambulance in town. So I had to wait for an ambulance to come from the next surrounding place. And my ambulance driver that I did know, he rang them and worded them up as to what was going on. However, they got to my house. I told them what I needed them to do, put in a peripheral line, and I needed to reconnect obviously the line from my pump to my existing line to the peripheral line. They refused to do it because they didn't have protocol about my drug. So I was just lucky that I had somebody there with me that day, because obviously I couldn't do it because it was in my arm at that stage or something. I couldn't do it myself for some reason. And because it was a peripheral, so I couldn't get to it. And so I had to get the person that was there to reconnect me, because they refused bluntly to do it because they didn't know the protocol of the drug. So that's one major issue that I've been trying to work hard with, my team as well, like trying to get a overall protocol, like, you know, it doesn't need to have the ins and outs. It just needs to have the important information so that all ambos around Australia have this, so that if there becomes an incident, they do have it. And we, you know, if I wasn't awake to tell them what to do, where would that leave us? So that's why I'm really proactive as to trying to get that side of things sorted for people that, you know, obviously it's scary when you first get on IV meds. So, you know, people like us who have been on it a long time, you sort of learn as you've gone on. But yeah, trying to make the transition onto IV meds for others, I think is my, you know, I'm trying hard to fix that or help others.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Kylie. I've had, I don't know, it's been 24 years on the IV medication. So, or 20, maybe 20 years on the IV medication, maybe stepping there a little bit. And so I've had a large variety of emergency situations arise, and that can be very scary initially, I think, when you're on the medication and you don't know what to do. But I think that emergency services, I don't think the way that they're currently established, I don't think that our specific, very minor population will be accommodated in the way that we need to. And so my advice is to prepare your top 5. And so my top 5 are my mum, my 2 sisters, my best friend, and another friend. And my top 5 are in close proximity to me. And, you know, I don't really go anywhere without someone in my top 5. So they are my go-to. I'm very hopeful that I don't pass out because I am the wealth of knowledge, but I've attempted to pass this knowledge on to as many as I can, but most particularly the top 5. One of my sisters happens to be an emergency nurse, and I live quite close to the hospital she works at. However, I think even before she was a nurse, she was still in the top 5 because she knows my story, knows the situation, and can pass on information to emergency services if required. In situations like you just described, Kylie, I have actually taken over the emergency medical practice rather than relied on emergency services and gone to a hospital where I know I will be safe. I've attempted to alleviate the emergency part of the situation as much as possible. So for instance, I had a PICC line in one day while I was on holidays in Ballarat. So I got my friend to drive me to the Alfred from Ballarat while I managed the medication as best as possible. The line was blocked, but not 100%. It was only partially occluded. So I could manually override the pump for a portion of time. I think relying on emergency surgeons in a true emergency situation is going to be essential, but acknowledging that they can't do certain things. And I think was great to have a friend available for you, Kylie, because I know the restrictions of a hospital. There are protocols, and it is to save people's lives. And for all they know, it could have been any medication that you were trying to administer. And I understand why they wouldn't. It's very frustrating. But I think having your top 5 around or available when you need is key. And, you know, I've had pumps malfunction at nighttime when I'm changing my cassette. You change it over, it doesn't quite work. Change it back to the old one, figure out what's wrong with the new one, set up a new pump, new line. But I always text my top 5, probably something happening, just so you know. Emergency service aren't going to help me in that situation, but my top 5 will.
Thanks so much, Tegan and Kylie. And yeah, so kind of answered another one that we got about what would you do in an emergency situation and learnings you've had. So thanks for sharing your experiences with those as well. So we have time for one more question. We're nearly at 1 o'clock, went by quickly. But last question for today we've got is, how have you managed your condition during COVID? Has it affected any access to your healthcare team? Anyone wanting to start that one off for us today? Or
I've actually had COVID. I don't know if if Kylie or Lucy or Tegan had. It was and obviously came through, which is great. I've been out for a week now, so it was very recent. It was very scary at the beginning. I notified the nurses at the Alfred, and they said exactly what I thought they'd say. Rest up. There's so much out there. It's really, really difficult to avoid at the moment. There's so much, and Omicron is just very easy to get at the moment. So rest as much as you can. If you have trouble breathing, ring an ambulance. But it was certainly those 2 years leading up, particularly the beginning, was very, very stressful. But now that everyone or most people are vaccinated and triple vaccinated, it's helped to alleviate that stress a little more, which is good. So
yeah, I totally agree with that, Kate. I think in the beginning I was almost phobic to the point of being a hermit in the beginning, and that was kind of the recommendation, was that we don't know what pH and COVID will do.
Right.
Your disease kind of looks like post-COVID syndrome, so we don't know what it would do to you. But at this point in time, I think it would be remiss of me to be acting like that. I'm triple vaxxed. It is a lot safer now, and like you described, Kate, a lot of people are saying that PH patients are coming out the other side of it exactly the same way you have, before and after, kind of the same. There's no sort of, we're not so worried about this extra level of, deterioration or other symptoms to worry about. And so I think you have to be cautious, but not anxious about it. I think you definitely have to play it safe, but I don't think you should be getting, restless at nighttime thinking about, COVID. I think we should be trying to live our lives, which is, I guess, what we are always trying to do. We are trying to survive PAH and get out the other side of this. And I think COVID has made me more aware of, living my life. And now that I feel, I'm vaxxed and it's a little bit safer, I just take precautions where possible.
Thank you so much. Were there any other thoughts from the other panelists before we close off today? Amazing. So thank you so much, everyone, for submitting your questions. Unfortunately, that is all we have time for today. But on behalf of Lung Foundation Australia, thank you so much, Kate, Kylie, Lucy and Tegan, for sharing your lived experiences with us today. We're really grateful, and it was really insightful to hear them. And I myself have learnt a lot from you ladies. I think a lot of our participants would share the same sentiments as well. So thank you. So you can find more information and resources around PAH on the Lung Foundation Australia website. And please also feel free to reach out to our Information Support Centre. The number is on the screen. It's 1800 654 301 option 3. There is also an email option as well. So if you have any questions following on what you've heard today, please get in touch and we'll try our best to help. Or if you'd like to connect with other people living with PAH, there's a beautiful peer support group as well. And it runs virtually, so anyone all over Australia can join. But that brings us to the conclusion of today's webinar. Thank you everybody for joining us. We hope you found this webinar helpful in answering key questions around living with PAH. And once again, thank you ladies for your valuable time. It was really beautiful. So have a lovely afternoon, everyone. Take care of yourself and each other, and bye for now.